Good evening. I'd like to call the August 10th, 2022 Town Board meeting to order. Ms. Marco, please call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Present.
Mrs. Miller-Herrera?
Present.
Mr. Dotson is absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Present.
And Mrs. Collins?
Present.
4 present and 1 absent.
Thank you, Ms. Marco. A quorum is present. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Marco, will you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to reserve any remarks that I might have until the end of the meeting. We have an executive session and a public hearing on the agenda. Do I have a motion for this board to go into executive session
I'll make that motion.
For employment history with respect to the employee 181102222? Motion by Mr. Christou.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes, to enter into executive session.
Mrs. Miller-Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dotson absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes.
Motion passes, and we'll enter into executive session at 7:01, we'll call it. Motion was made by Councilmember Christou to leave the executive session. It was seconded by Councilmember Mastriani. Motion passed, and we returned from executive session unanimously and returned at 7:04 p.m. I'd like to open the public hearing on introductory local law number 6 of 2022 to amend chapter 188 of the town code relating to noise. Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak?
No.
Is there anyone who didn't sign up to speak on this local law that would like to speak now? And Megan, is there anyone on Zoom? Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Do I have a second? I'll second it. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller-Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dotson is absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes to close it.
Resolution passes, or motion passes. We'll now move to privilege of the floor. Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak? Please remember to keep your remarks to around 4 minutes. When you get close to your time, I'll raise my hand.
Richard Freeman?
And please remember to, when you come up to the podium, state your name and your address.
My name is Richard Freeman. I live at 742 Kramer Avenue in Rotterdam. I wanted to thank Molly and Jack for helping me getting my water main hooked up. It took 18 months, and I had asked Evan to help me with it a long time ago, and I got no help out of him. But Molly and Jack made it happen, and I wanted to thank them personally for that. And Larry still hasn't come to fix the road. So I figured I'd let you know that while I was here. But, you know, this whole situation was totally ridiculous and uncalled for. And I hope nobody else has to go through this. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy Brick? Mr. Brick, give me 1 second.
Sure.
Sorry.
It's not a good sign I stand up and supervisor meets. Well, we have this time, I would add that you are on track to complete the shortest town board meeting in the history of Rotterdam, so please keep it going.
Keep it going.
I do apologize, I'm sorry.
Hi, good evening. Andy Brick from the Brick Law Firm, 2 Computer Drive West, Albany, New York. I'm here this evening for proposed resolution 24622, call for a public hearing for sewer district number 2, extension number 17. I represent development in Helderberg Meadows, who's the property owner, who has worked with the Planning Commission for a number of years to obtain approval for a really exciting 124-unit condominium project. And the next step in that process is to hopefully have this town board consider and approve a map plan and report for a sewer district extension. So we'd ask that you would pass that resolution and schedule a public hearing for September 14th, I believe is the date. And at that time, our engineer will be here along with me to answer any technical questions that they may have, but he's on vacation or he'd be here this evening. And I was just here to ask that you schedule a public hearing and answer any questions you may have tonight.
That's at Rotterdam Junction on the 14th.
Oh, great, super. Even better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Bowers.
And yes, I am Paul Bowers. I'm a commercial real estate broker with Berkshire Hathaway and have been for 44 years and have represented a number of properties here in this town for a long time. In any event, I'd like to offer my condolences first, respectfully, trying to get through the master plan comprehensive thing's been a long time coming. One of the properties that I've been asked to speak about are two on Twinsburg Road. One is Flying J, the other is the Avery Farm property at 774 and 778 Twinsburg Road. Both of those parcels, coincidentally, are zoned agricultural. And since the time that George died, Mr. Krause, on that particular property at 900 Twinsburg Road, there hasn't been a farm activity on that, nor on the Avery property in good 20 years. And we would like to have those properties considered to go to B2, because the adjoining properties, the pilot property is zone B2, and the Mastriani property is zone B2, and both could extend the zoning line from A to B with the board's observation. It just seems an injustice to have those properties zoned agricultural when they're in a 13,000 car a day going by the front door. It's much more appropriate for a commercial use. Going there at B2 would make sense, very much so. Much appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Brenda Trojan.
Brenda Trojan, 1033 6th Street, Rotterdam, Common area. I'm going to be talking about the ramifications of the lease at Viaport. I know we're going to be in a long legal battle. I know that. My problem is this board and this town should not be placed in that position when it was the previous board members and Mr. Thomason and the attorney that put us in this predicament. I'll still be out there petitioning like I've been doing. I've been this week, 95-degree weather. I will go up if we have to go to a legal battle with Viaport, because the previous board, and two of those members are on this board today, felt that it was necessary to put Rotterdam in an uncomfortable position where, two people are attorneys, two of the board members are business owners, you had the attorneys, so Thomason was a financial consultant. You guys did not read, did not consult that this would put Rotterdam in a bad position? I'm upset for Rotterdam. I've been here 37 years. I love this town. But what the previous board did and put us in a position where now we will probably wind up with a legal battle. First of all, I want to thank all the board members, except for Mr. Evans and Miss Samantha. I want to thank you guys for last week. Those people who are listening on Zoom, I didn't get a chance to thank the residents who supported my petition, who are out there supporting me. Please, we need your support if and when this comes to a legal battle. I am disappointed with the previous board because we didn't have stupid people on that board, and we don't now, but you didn't then. And to sit there and tell us 2 meetings before, Mr. Evans, that you relied on the attorney to give you information when you're a business owner, and Mr. Signor, Samantha, you guys are attorneys. You didn't know what this would do to Rotterdam, to residents. You guys put us in a hole. I will still be out there petitioning, and I promise this board, and I promise those that are listening on Zoom, if this goes, if we don't have good neighbors in Viaport, which I doubt we do, this goes to a legal battle. The residents of Rotterdam are going to be out there in full force. And all I need is, let me know, we will be there. We will be there defending Rotterdam. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Is there anybody who wants to speak tonight that didn't sign up? Megan, is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak? Okay. Then I'm going to close the privilege of the floor, and we'll move on to our resolutions. Our first resolution is Resolution 240 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To authorize the town supervisor to execute a memorandum of agreement with respect to employee number 181022.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani on the question. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson is absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 241 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To establish the position of senior water sewer maintenance worker.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second? I'll second it. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson is absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. The next resolution is Resolution 242 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To authorize the town supervisor to execute the memorandum of agreement between the town of Rotterdam and the Civil Service Employees Association, recognizing the new job title of senior water sewer maintenance worker.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani on the question. Clerk will read the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson is absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 243 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
Adoption of the 2022 adjusted base proportions.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second? I'll second it. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson is absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 244 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To amend resolution number 160.22, appoint Jeffrey R. Breer to the position of building inspector.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Do I have a second? I'll second it. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson is absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 245 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To enter into a contract with CB20 to provide, install, and configure 2 UPS units.
Okay. Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Christou. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson is absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 246 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To call for a public hearing on sewer district number 2, extension 17, condos at Helderberg Meadows.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Christou. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson is absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 247 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To accept revenue for the town clerk's office for July 2022.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion? I'll make the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson is absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 248 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To accept town board meeting minutes.
Okay. Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson is absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Resolution 249 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
Accepting the draft comprehensive plan, initiating seeker coordinated review and declaration of intent to be lead agency for the adoption of the comprehensive plan.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second? I'll second. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson is absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Resolution 250 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
A resolution regarding the State Environmental Quality Review Act process amendment for the Town of Rotterdam wastewater treatment improvements project.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Christou. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson is absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 251 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
Call for a public hearing on the draft Town of Rotterdam comprehensive plan.
Okay. Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Miller Herrera. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson is absent. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. This concludes our resolutions for tonight. We will move on to liaison reports. Do any board members wish to speak on liaisons? Okay. Do any of the board members have anything they wish to say under miscellaneous?
Yes, Madam Supervisor, okay. First of all, as many know, I was not at the last meeting. I informed the supervisor that I could not make that due to a prior commitment. Unfortunately, it was something of urgency, so it was not time to get consulted on a rescheduling where I was able to make it. And I actually missed that commitment because I got stuck in my business, okay? And, you know, I appreciate all the comments that are made regarding this issue at the Viaport Mall. But just as everyone else is passionate about their feelings on it and their opinion on it, I'm a little passionate about a couple of things as well. And I will also stand up for what's right, even if I stand alone, okay? First of all, the xenophobic comments that are being made. Oh, the company's from Turkey and they're not part of this community. Nothing could be further from the truth, okay? Let's remember one thing as we display our opinions. They are a corporate citizen and a corporate resident of this town. They purchased that mall for $9 million, okay? And if you think crime's an issue around here today, board up that mall and see what happens with crime down there. You have your opinions, and you know what? I respect that, and you have your right to come up to that dais and defend your opinions and give your opinions. And yes, I will own the fact that I did not look at the lease carefully, because I would not have been in support of a lease agreement. I will own that, and I'll take my licks on it. I got no problem. If people feel they have to get up there week after week and attack me, so be it. That's what I signed up for. I'm okay with that. But as a community, and if you're standing up for the town of Rotterdam to get up here and make disparaging remarks and make comments about how, you know, and somehow make the mall the enemy, I can't stand by that without saying something. I'm sorry, okay? There was a comment about about my salary being paid. Yes, I do get a small stipend for this job, and it comes from the citizens of the town of Rotterdam. But for the record, it doesn't cover the cost of the people I need to cover at my own business. So I do not appreciate those kind of comments. And again, as a community, we do not look good by disparaging businesses, disparaging people, and others in this town. Okay, yes, no one is perfect, but I will repeat and defend the fact that this previous board that was here did nothing self-serving, did nothing without the intent of what they thought was best for this community. So I ask for a little civility as we move forward with this. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak under miscellaneous? This concludes our business for tonight. Do I have?
Oh, I need to make a comment. That comment.
No, Brenda, I'm sorry.
No, that comment was directed solely to me. Solely to me. I never said any xenophobic comments about Viapor, about the owners. He owes me an apology. He owes me an apology.
You're out of order.
This is when you start attacking. You start attacking residents. This is why we got empty seats.
I'm not attacking.
Yes, you did attack me. Not you attacked me, sir.
Okay, you're out of order.
I know I'm out of order, and so is he. So is he. I'm a tax-paying citizen, and I did not make xenophobic, and you were looking straight at me when you're making those comments, sir. None of these people are up there talking about Viapor, just me.
Myself on comments that were made.
Okay. I have a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
I didn't hear who made the motion, I'm sorry.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani
Okay.
to adjourn the meeting, seconded by Mr. Christel. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.